I never thought a simple sweater could break my heart. But sometimes, it isn't the object itself. It's what it represents. Love, time, effort, all quietly dismissed, like a whisper nobody cared to hear. I remember the night I started knitting that little sweater. It was early October. The first chill of autumn had just started to sneak through the cracks of my old farmhouse windows. The leaves outside had turned gold and orange, and my hands, though slower than they used to be, still remembered the rhythm of the needles. Click, clack, pause, pull. It's funny how you never forget the things you used to do out of love. My daughter Laura was expecting her first child, my first grandbaby. I remember the day she told me. How her voice trembled with excitement. How her eyes lit up like she was that little girl again, the one who used to run around the backyard barefoot, chasing fireflies until dusk. I cried when she told me. I truly did. I couldn't help it. I'd been waiting for this day for so long. A new life in the family, another heartbeat, another tiny pair of hands to hold. So that night I decided to knit something special. Not just a gift, but a memory. A piece of me that the baby could wear, feel, and maybe one day keep. I spent hours searching through old drawers for my knitting kit. It had been years since I'd last used it, since before my husband passed. His name was Harold. He used to sit across from me in that same room, reading the newspaper, humming under his breath, while I knitted sweaters, scarves, little socks for Laura. I could almost see him there again as I opened that dusty old box. The smell of old yarn and cedar took me back to a time when the house was full of laughter instead of echoes. I found the perfect yarn, soft baby blue, gentle enough for a newborn skin, the kind that doesn't itch or irritate. I'd kept it for years thinking one day, maybe I'd need it again, and now I did. I started the first stitch that night, with the TV murmuring faintly in the background and the clock ticking on the wall like a metronome marking time. The house was quiet, except for the sound of the needles clicking together. I whispered to myself as I worked, "This is for you, little one." Every loop, every pull was made with love. I imagined the baby wearing it on their first Christmas, maybe while Laura and her husband sat by the fire, smiling, taking pictures. Maybe they'd even send one to me, of the baby wrapped in the sweater Grandma made. But as I knitted, a little ache grew in my chest, because deep down, I knew things weren't the same anymore between me and Laura. It started a few years after Harold passed. She became distant, not cruel, just preoccupied, busy. She had her career, her husband, her life. I told myself it was natural. That's how life goes. Kids grow up, they move on. But the calls became less frequent. Visits even rarer. Birthdays came and went with a quick, "Love you, Mom," over text. Still, I didn't hold it against her. She was my only daughter, the only piece of Harold I had left in this world. And now, she was bringing a new life into it. A part of her. And in a way, a part of me too. So, I knitted through the nights. When my fingers cramped, I stopped only long enough to stretch them before starting again. I wanted it perfect. Every line even, every thread soft and warm. I imagined the baby's little chest rising and falling beneath it, safe and peaceful. Sometimes I'd talk to Harold while I worked. "You'd be proud of her," I'd whisper. "Our little girl's going to be a mother." And maybe I imagined it, but I could almost feel him there. His presence, soft and steady. By the time I finished, 3 weeks had passed. I held the sweater up in front of the light. It was beautiful. A soft sky blue piece with tiny wooden buttons shaped like stars. I'd even embroidered the baby's initials on the inside of the collar. Just 2 little letters, neat and quiet. I wrapped it carefully in tissue paper, tied it with a white ribbon, and slipped a handwritten note inside. "Made with love. For my grandbaby. May this keep you warm and remind you that Grandma loves you more than words can say." I mailed it the very next morning. For days, I waited for a call. A thank you. A picture. Something. anything. But silence. I tried not to think much of it. Maybe they were busy getting ready for the baby. Maybe the package hadn't arrived yet. Maybe, just maybe, Laura had seen it and smiled, even if she hadn't said so. Weeks passed. Then the baby was born. A boy. I found out through a text. Just a short message with a picture attached. My heart melted when I saw that tiny face. Eyes closed, hands curled into fists. I called Laura right away, but she didn't answer. I left a voicemail, voice shaking with joy. "Congratulations, sweetheart. I'm so happy for you. He's beautiful." Days passed. No reply. I tried again and again. Texts, calls, even a little card I mailed. No response. It hurt. It really did. But I told myself she was adjusting. New babies take a lot of energy. I remembered those sleepless nights when she was little. I was sure she'd call eventually. She didn't. Months later, when she finally invited me over, I nearly cried from relief. It was just for an afternoon visit. She said they'd love for me to see the baby. Finally. I spent that whole morning getting ready, even made a little pie to take with me. My heart fluttered like it used to before Christmas mornings. When I arrived, Laura opened the door with a polite smile. Not cold, but not warm either. There was distance in her eyes, a kind I hadn't seen before. And when I saw the baby for the first time, oh, he was perfect. Little chubby cheeks, eyes like Harold's. I reached out, hands trembling, and whispered, "Hello, my sweet boy." Laura let me hold him for a few minutes. Then she took him back gently and said, "He needs to nap now." I looked around the house while we talked. Baby toys everywhere. Diapers stacked neatly. Bottles, blankets. And then I saw it, on a shelf in the corner. A small unopened box. My handwriting on the label. The sweater. Still wrapped, untouched. I froze. My chest tightened. I wanted to ask why, but the words never left my mouth. I just smiled faintly, pretending I didn't see it. We made small talk for a while, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. Every time I looked at that little box, I felt a sting, not anger. Just a deep, quiet sadness. When I left that day, she hugged me briefly at the door. "Thanks for coming, Mom," she said softly. I nodded, smiled, and walked to my car. But as soon as I sat down, the tears came. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. Not because of the sweater, but because I realized how far apart we'd grown. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the image of that unopened box replaying over and over in my mind. It sat there on her shelf like a secret I wasn't supposed to notice. Like a quiet symbol of how out of place I'd become in my own daughter's world. It wasn't about the sweater anymore. It was about what it meant. I'd poured my heart into that little thing. Every stitch was a piece of me. A mother's love, a grandmother's hope. It was supposed to mean connection, warmth, family. But seeing it unopened, untouched, it felt like my love had been politely refused. When you raise a child, you imagine a certain future. You picture Sunday dinners, birthday calls, maybe little visits where they bring the kids over and you bake cookies together. But life doesn't always unfold that way. Sometimes the people you love the most quietly drift away, one missed phone call at a time. I tried to brush it off. I told myself maybe she just forgot it was there. Maybe she didn't want to dirty it yet, or maybe it was too small by the time the baby came. I made excuses for her, like mothers always do. But deep down, there was a crack in my heart that wouldn't close. Over the next few weeks, I tried calling her a few times, just to ask how the baby was, how she was doing. Most of the time, the calls went unanswered. Sometimes I'd get a quick text. "Sorry, Mom, crazy day." Or, "We'll talk soon." But soon never came. I'd sit by the kitchen window with a cup of tea, watching the mailbox, hoping maybe she'd send me a photo. I even printed one from her social media. A small picture of the baby smiling in a store-bought outfit. I framed it myself and put it on the mantel next to Harold's photo. Sometimes I'd talk to the baby through that picture. I know it sounds silly, but it made me feel close to him somehow. "Grandma's right here, sweetheart," I'd whisper. "Maybe one day you'll wear the sweater I made for you." The days started blending together. I spent most of my time knitting again. Scarves, blankets, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind quiet. The rhythm of it was the only thing that soothed me. Then one afternoon I got a call. It was Laura. "Hey, Mom," she said, her voice light but hurried. "We're going to be in your area this weekend. Thought we might stop by for a bit." My heart leapt. "Oh, honey, I'd love that." She hesitated. "It'll just be a short visit. We've got a lot to do." "That's fine," I said quickly. "Any time with you is enough." I spent the next 2 days cleaning the house like company was coming for Christmas. I baked cookies, dusted the furniture, even set the good plates out on the table. I wanted everything to feel warm, like home. When they arrived, I saw how much the baby had grown. Chubby cheeks, curious eyes, already crawling. He reached for me, and my heart melted. For a moment, everything felt right again. We sat in the living room. I tried making small talk, asking about their lives, their plans, but Laura's attention kept drifting. She was scrolling on her phone half the time, smiling politely when I spoke, like she was only half there. At one point, I mentioned the sweater. I didn't mean to. The words just slipped out. "I saw the package on your shelf last time I was there," I said softly. "Did it fit him okay?" Her expression shifted. Uncomfortable, almost defensive. "Oh, that," she said, clearing her throat. "Yeah, we got it. I just forgot about it, I guess. It's really sweet, Mom. Thank you." I smiled, but inside something twisted. "You forgot?" I repeated quietly. She nodded, glancing away. You know how busy things get. Busy. That word again. The same one that had built walls between us for years. I wanted to tell her how much it had meant to me. How many nights I'd sat up knitting, whispering prayers for her and the baby. I wanted to say how much I missed her, but I didn't. Because I could see she didn't want that conversation, so instead I smiled again, pretending her words didn't sting. They stayed for less than an hour. When they left, she hugged me quickly at the door and said, "Love you, Mom." And then they were gone. The house was silent again. The cookies sat untouched on the plate. I stood there watching the car disappear down the road and whispered, "I love you too, sweetheart." I went back inside, sat in Harold's old chair and cried quietly. The kind of cry that doesn't make a sound. Just tears that slip down and disappear into your lap. That night, I took out my knitting again. I couldn't sleep, so I started another project. Not a sweater this time. A blanket, soft pale yellow. I told myself it was for the baby again. But part of me knew I was just knitting to fill the emptiness. Sometimes I wondered if Harold could see all this. If he'd be disappointed. He'd always been the bridge between us. Calm, patient, the kind of man who could talk sense into anyone. After he passed, it was like the bridge crumbled, and the river between me and Laura grew wider each year. The next time I saw them was months later, at Easter. She didn't invite me, exactly. I heard through a neighbor that Laura's family was having a little get-together at a restaurant downtown. I wasn't sure if I should go, but something in me couldn't stand the thought of spending another holiday alone. So I went. When I arrived, I spotted them across the room. Laura, her husband, their friends. The baby was in a high chair, giggling. For a brief second, my heart lifted. But when Laura saw me, surprise flashed across her face. Not joy, just surprise. "Mom, you came?" Her tone wasn't warm. It was careful. "I didn't want to miss seeing you all," I said softly. "It's been a while." She hesitated, then forced a smile. "Of course, sure, grab a seat." I sat down beside them, trying to join in the conversation. But it was clear I didn't fit. They talked about people I didn't know, trips they were planning, shows they watched. I laughed when they laughed, though I didn't always understand the jokes. And then it happened. A woman at the table, one of Laura's friends, Noticed the baby's sweater, a soft cream-colored one that looked store-bought. "Oh, that's adorable," she said. "Where did you get it?" Laura smiled proudly. "Oh, from this cute little boutique downtown." I froze. My heart sank. Not a word about the one I made. Not even a mention. I excused myself to the restroom, locked the stall door, and cried quietly into a paper towel. My reflection in the mirror looked old, tired, forgotten. When I returned, no one seemed to notice my eyes were red. I stayed through dessert, forcing small smiles, then left early saying I was tired. The drive home was quiet. I didn't even turn on the radio, just the hum of the road and the weight of everything I didn't say. That night, I went to the closet where I kept my yarn and needles. I took out the leftover blue thread from the baby's sweater and held it in my hands. It felt so soft, like holding a memory that hurt too much to keep. I thought about throwing it away, but I couldn't. Instead, I folded it neatly, placed it back in the box, and whispered, maybe someday he'll find it. Maybe someday he'll know how much love was in every stitch. And maybe, just maybe, that'll be enough. After that Easter dinner, something inside me quietly broke. It wasn't loud or dramatic. Just a quiet realization that maybe the world I belonged to wasn't theirs anymore. I stopped calling for a while. I told myself it was because I didn't want to bother them. But deep down, I think I just didn't want to hear my own disappointment echo through another unanswered phone call. Days started to blend together again. Morning coffee, soft knitting needles clicking in the stillness, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. My house felt too big, too quiet. Sometimes I'd catch myself talking out loud, mostly to Harold's picture. "Guess it's just us again, huh?" I'd say with a tired smile. "You were always the talker, remember?" Some nights I'd sit in his chair and go through old photo albums. Pictures of Laura as a little girl, her missing front teeth, her first dance recital, that big smile when she held up her college acceptance letter. Every memory was full of light, every picture full of love. I'd trace her face with my finger and whisper, "Where did we go wrong, sweetheart?" I didn't mean it as blame, more like a quiet wonder. How love can fade between people who were once inseparable. A few weeks later, I decided to visit the local park. It was spring, and the cherry blossoms were blooming. I used to take Laura there when she was little. We'd feed ducks and share an ice cream cone. As I sat on the same worn bench we used to share, I watched other families, young mothers pushing strollers, fathers chasing their toddlers, grandparents laughing with their grandkids. A woman about my age sat down beside me. She had soft gray hair, kind eyes, and a smile that reached her wrinkles. We started chatting, just simple things at first. The weather, the flowers, the way kids run like the world is endless. Her name was Maggie. She told me she came to the park every week to feed the birds. "Gives me something to look forward to," she said with a laugh. I smiled. "Me too. Well, it used to." She looked at me gently, the way people do when they know there's more behind your words. "Used to?" she asked, so I told her. Not everything, just the light version. About my daughter, the sweater, how life changes, and sometimes you're not sure when you stop belonging. Maggie nodded slowly. "Families are strange," she said. "We give them everything we have, and sometimes they forget we're still here. But it doesn't mean the love goes away." Her words stayed with me long after she left. I started visiting the park more often after that. Some days Maggie was there, some days she wasn't. But even when I was alone, the sound of laughter and the sight of children running made me feel less invisible. One afternoon, a little girl tripped near my bench. She couldn't have been more than 5. I helped her up, brushed off her knees, and gave her a tissue from my purse. Her mother hurried over, apologizing. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," I smiled. "Oh, it's all right. Kids fall. That's how they learn to run." The woman smiled back, grateful. The little girl looked up at me and said, "Thank you, Grandma. It took me by surprise. I don't know why that word hit me so hard. Grandma. It was simple, innocent, but it warmed something in me I didn't know was still alive. That night, I went home feeling lighter. I made myself a cup of cocoa, turned on some old music, and knitted a few rows. For the first time in months, it wasn't out of sadness. It was just comforting. Then, a few days later, something unexpected happened. I got a letter. A real letter. Not a bill. Not junk mail. A letter with my name written in careful handwriting I didn't recognize. I opened it, and inside was a card. A picture of a small boy with a crayon drawing, messy and colorful. Underneath it said, "Thank you for the blanket, Grandma." At first, I thought it was a mistake, but then I noticed the handwriting on the back. It was Laura's. She'd written, "Mom, I found the sweater. I'm sorry. I really am. Life got so busy, and I didn't realize how much I'd hurt you by not opening that box. I dressed him in it today. He looks perfect. I wish you were here to see him. Love, Laura." I just sat there holding that card to my chest. For a long time, I didn't move. Tears rolled down, but they weren't the heavy kind this time. They were light, almost gentle, like something broken inside me had just been carefully glued back together. It wasn't a full apology. It didn't fix everything, but it was something. A small bridge being built back over the distance that had grown between us. The next day, I wrote her back. "Dear Laura, thank you for the card. That sweater was made with all the love I have left in me. I'm glad it finally found its way to him. I miss you both. Come visit when you can. The cookies are waiting." I mailed it the same afternoon. After that, I didn't hear back for a few weeks. But somehow, it didn't feel quite as lonely anymore. I started walking to the park again, sometimes bringing my knitting along. I'd sit there under the trees, letting the wind move through my hair. And I'd think about how love doesn't always arrive when or how we expect it. Sometimes it comes late, but it still comes. A month later, on a quiet Sunday morning, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, Laura stood there, holding the baby. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. I just stood there, tears welling up. "You came," I whispered. "I wanted you to see him," she said. "And I wanted to say I'm sorry in person." She handed me the baby, and I took him carefully, my hands trembling. He was wearing the blue sweater, my sweater. It fit perfectly. I held him close, breathing in that sweet baby scent. And for the first time in a long while, my heart felt full again. Laura looked around the house, smiling faintly. "You still keep everything the same." "Old habits," I said, laughing softly. "I guess I never stopped waiting for you." She nodded, her eyes glossy. "I know. I think part of me was scared to come back." "Scared you'd be angry?" I shook my head. "You're my daughter, Laura. There's nothing in this world that could make me stop loving you. Not ever." We spent the afternoon together. I made her favorite pie, pecan, just like I used to when she was little. She sat at the kitchen table while I cooked, the baby on her lap, and for the first time in years, it felt like family again. That night after they left, I sat on the couch with Harold's photo beside me. "Well," I said softly, smiling at him. "Looks like she came home after all." The wind rattled gently against the window, and I swear I could almost hear his laugh, deep and warm, the way it used to fill the house. I knew life wouldn't go back to how it was before. Too much time had passed, too many words left unsaid. But that was okay, because love, even when it's bruised and quiet, is still love. And sometimes just having it find its way back, even in small ways, is enough. After Laura's visit that Sunday, my home felt alive again. The air carried a different kind of warmth, the kind I hadn't felt in years. I could still hear the echo of the baby's laugh in the living room, still smell the faint sweetness of the pie cooling on the counter. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a ghost living inside old walls. I felt like a mother again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the way Laura looked when she walked in. Nervous, hesitant, almost like the child who used to hide behind my leg on her first day of school. Time may have added lines to our faces and weight to our hearts, but deep down, she was still my little girl. I got up around midnight and walked into the baby's room. Well, what used to be Laura's old room. It still had faint traces of her childhood. A few drawings framed on the wall. The wooden rocking horse Harold made by hand. I sat on the edge of the bed and ran my hand across the quilt. The same one I stitched before she left for college. It's strange how a house remembers even when people forget. The next morning, I brewed my coffee like always. But this time, I didn't drink it alone. Laura had left a note on the table before leaving the night before. It said, "Thank you, Mom. I'll visit again soon. Love you." 3 words. I'll visit again. They were small, but to me, they meant the world. Days went by, and I found myself smiling more often. I started tidying the house, dusting shelves, rearranging photo frames, baking again. Not because I had to, but because suddenly it mattered. It felt like preparing for something, or maybe someone, to return. One afternoon, Maggie called. We hadn't spoken in a while, and when she asked how I'd been, I could hear the surprise in her voice when I said, "Good, really good." I told her about Laura's visit, about the baby wearing the sweater, about the pie and the laughter, and how, for a few hours, it felt like nothing had ever gone wrong. "That's wonderful," Maggie said. "See? Love finds its way back when you least expect it." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "It does. But it's not just about being found, Maggie. It's also about keeping your heart open while you wait." She laughed softly. "Well, you've got that part down. You've always had a big heart, Ruth." That night, I sat on the porch, wrapped in a shawl, watching the sun go down. The colors stretched across the sky. Pink, gold, orange. The same hues I used in the baby's sweater. I thought about how each thread, each stitch had carried a piece of my love, waiting patiently to be worn. Sometimes love takes time to be seen, and sometimes you just have to trust that it will be. A few weeks later, Laura called again. I still remember the sound of her voice. Softer than before, gentler. "Mom, we're thinking of visiting again this weekend. Would that be okay?" "Of course," I said, trying not to sound too eager. "You don't even have to ask." When they arrived, the baby had grown a little chubbier, his eyes brighter. He reached for me this time without hesitation. My heart melted. We spent the day in the backyard. I showed Laura the old rose bushes Harold had planted. They were still blooming, though not as full as they used to be. "They're stubborn," I said with a laugh. "They keep blooming even when the season's wrong." Laura smiled. "Kinda like you." We sat on the porch swing watching the baby play on a blanket. Laura leaned her head on my shoulder like she used to when she was little. "I've missed this," she whispered. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "So have I, sweetheart," she sighed. "It's been hard, Mom. Life's just fast. Between work, the baby, and everything else. I didn't mean to drift away." I turned to her, my hand resting on hers. "I know. You don't have to explain. We all get lost sometimes. What matters is that you found your way back." She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "You always know what to say." I chuckled softly. "Comes with age. Or maybe it's just all the nights talking to myself." She laughed, really laughed. And for that brief moment, it felt like no time had passed at all. That evening after they left, I noticed something on the kitchen counter. A small framed picture. It was of me holding the baby in his blue sweater. Underneath, in neat handwriting, Laura had written, "Grandma Ruth, love in every stitch." I didn't even realize I was crying until I felt the tears drip onto my hand. That picture became my favorite thing in the house. I placed it right next to Harold's photo. I imagined him smiling at it too. Over the next few months, they visited often. Sometimes for dinner, sometimes just for coffee. Each visit stitched us closer together, slowly, quietly, the way healing often happens. One afternoon, Laura came alone. I could tell something was on her mind. She sat at the table, fidgeting with her hands. "Mom," she started, "I wanted to tell you something. Remember that night you mailed me that letter after the card?" I nodded. "I never told you this, but I cried when I read it. I didn't expect you to respond. I thought you'd be angry or disappointed, but you weren't. You were just kind. That's what made me realize how wrong I'd been. You didn't deserve to be forgotten like that." My eyes softened. "Sweetheart, there's no need to dwell on that. What's done is done." "I know," she said, "but I needed you to know that I saw it, that I understand now." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you for never giving up on me." I squeezed her fingers gently. "Mothers don't give up, Laura. We wait. Sometimes for too long, maybe. But we wait." She smiled through her tears. "I'm so lucky you did." After she left that evening, I sat on the porch again, listening to the crickets, the quiet hum of the streetlights, and the soft creak of the rocking chair. The world felt still, peaceful. I thought about all the years I'd spent waiting for calls, for visits, for someone to open a simple box with a handmade sweater inside. It had felt endless then, but now I realized something. Those years weren't wasted. They were filled with love I refused to stop giving. Love doesn't vanish when it's unreturned. It just waits patiently, like a light left on for someone finding their way home. And that's what I'd done. I'd kept the light on. Time has a funny way of softening even the sharpest edges. As the months turned into years, I noticed that the pain I once carried had changed shape. It was still there, a quiet ache that sometimes woke me in the middle of the night. But it didn't hurt the same way anymore. It had become something gentler, something almost sacred. Maybe that's what forgiveness really is. Not forgetting what happened. Not pretending it didn't break you, but learning how to carry it without bitterness. Laura and her little family became a part of my everyday life again. They visited every Sunday, sometimes with food, sometimes just to talk. My house began to fill up with the sound of laughter, toys scattered on the floor, little handprints on my windows. The silence that once haunted these rooms was replaced by life. Messy, noisy, wonderful life. One day, Laura asked me to babysit while she ran errands. I was thrilled, of course. The baby, though he wasn't much of a baby anymore, ran straight into my arms when he arrived. "Grandma Ruth!" he shouted, his tiny arms wrapping around my neck. I hugged him tightly. "You're getting so big," I whispered, brushing a curl from his forehead. We spent the day baking cookies and building little towers out of wooden blocks. He made me wear one of his toy crowns and called me Queen Grandma. I laughed so hard I cried. Later, when he fell asleep on the couch, I sat there watching him, marveling at how much love one little person could bring into a room. I thought about the sweater, the one that had started all this. It was folded neatly in a drawer in my bedroom. It wasn't about the sweater anymore, not really. It was about what it represented. Care, patience, the small quiet ways we show love that sometimes go unseen for years. I realized then that maybe love doesn't need to be seen immediately to be real. Sometimes it just waits, like that sweater in the closet, until someone's ready to unwrap it. When Laura came back that evening, she looked around and smiled. "Everything okay, Mom?" I nodded. "Perfect. We had a wonderful day," she laughed. "I can tell. He's been talking about you nonstop lately. He says you make the best cookies in the world." I grinned. "Well, that's because they're made with Grandma magic." Before they left, Laura hugged me. Really hugged me. The kind that lingers. "Mom," she said quietly, "I know I've said this before, but thank you. For waiting, for forgiving me, for still loving me when I didn't deserve it." I placed my hand on her cheek. "Sweetheart, you always deserved it. You were just too busy to see it." She smiled, her eyes misty. "You're the best mom I could have ever had." And just like that, something inside me settled. A peace I'd been searching for, maybe all my life. After they left, I went into my room and took out the sweater again. I laid it across my lap and ran my fingers over the stitches. They were a little worn now, the yarn slightly stretched, but it was still whole, just like my heart. I whispered a quiet thank you. To God, to Harold, to life itself, for giving me another chance to love and be loved. That night, as I sat by the window watching the stars, I thought about how easy it is to feel invisible when you get older. The world moves faster, people grow busier, and suddenly you find yourself sitting in the background of your own story. But maybe that's where the beauty lies, in realizing that even from the background, your love still colors every part of the picture. You see, love doesn't fade with time. It grows roots. It becomes the quiet strength in someone else's smile, the warmth behind their kindness, the echo in their laughter. And as I sat there, the moonlight spilling gently through the curtains, I realized that even if I were to leave this world tomorrow, I'd have no regrets, because I had loved deeply, stubbornly, endlessly. Laura once told me she kept that framed photo of us in her living room, right above the fireplace. She said it reminded her of what family really means. Not perfection, not constant closeness, but choosing each other again. Even after the distance, even after the silence. That's what family is. That's what love is. I know there are people out there, maybe even some of you listening to this, who feel forgotten, left behind, invisible. Maybe your family doesn't call like they used to. Maybe your friends stopped visiting. Maybe you've spent holidays alone, birthdays forgotten, dinners eaten in silence. But please hear me when I say this. You are not invisible. You are not unloved. The love you've given, even if it hasn't been returned yet, still exists. It lives in the people you've touched, in the memories you've made, in the quiet goodness you've shared without expecting anything back. Maybe one day, that love will come back to you, in a hug, in a smile, in a knock at the door, when you least expect it. And even if it doesn't, you can still find peace knowing that your heart gave what it was made to give. As I get older, I've learned that peace doesn't always come from others remembering you. Sometimes it comes from remembering yourself, who you are, what you've given, and how much love you still carry inside you. And if you've ever felt forgotten, I want you to do something for me tonight. Go look in the mirror and remind yourself, you matter. Your story matters. Your love matters. Because somewhere, someone's world is brighter. Because you existed. Maybe you're like me. A grandmother sitting in a quiet house, knitting, waiting for the phone to ring. Or maybe you're younger, feeling like no one notices how hard you're trying. Wherever you are, whatever your story, please don't lose faith in love. It has a way of finding its way back, even after years of silence. I once thought that sweater would remain forever unopened, that all my effort had been wasted. But now I see it was never about the sweater. It was about patience, about love that doesn't give up, about how sometimes the smallest act of care can mend what distance and pride have broken. So tonight, as I sit here with my tea, the house softly humming with the sounds of evening, I feel grateful that my story didn't end in bitterness, grateful that love, even after being forgotten, found its way home. And if you're still listening to my story, thank you. From one heart to another, thank you. Before you go, I want to ask something of you. If my story touched you, even just a little, share it. Someone out there might need to hear it. Someone out there might be sitting in their own quiet room, wondering if they've been forgotten too. Let them know they're not alone. And if you felt something, hope, sadness, maybe even a bit of healing, then please, like this video, subscribe, and stay with me for more stories like this. Because sometimes, all it takes is one story, one voice, to remind us that love is still alive, even in the quiet, even in the waiting. Thank you for listening. And wherever you are, whoever you're missing, may you find your way back to love, just as it found its way back to me.